Hey church family, in Colossians chapter 3, we read these words. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you're serving. How can we put those words into practice in whatever job we happen to be doing? Let me zero in on three things that those verses talk about. The first thing we can do is make sure that whatever we're doing, we're giving it our all. We're giving it 100%. There's some people who, if you ask them why they're doing the work they're doing, they would tell you that they're doing it for a paycheck. After all, we all have bills to pay. But what the verses that I read tell us is that whatever you do, you ought to work at it with all your heart. And that means even if the job you're doing right now isn't necessarily your dream job, we still should give it our all. The second thing we can do is to change bosses. I'm not talking about getting a different job. I'm talking about what Paul means when he writes, working for the Lord, not for human masters. And when he says, it is the Lord Christ you're serving. Have you ever found yourself working harder when the boss is watching? That's human nature. It's natural to want the approval of others. But if you take Paul's words to heart and are doing the work you're doing for the Lord, then you'll know that nothing you do for him ever escapes his notice. And the third thing we can do is to check our attitude. We can make sure that we're not grumbling about the work we're doing. Do you remember the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis? Do you remember how he was treated unfairly and wound up in prison for a crime he didn't commit? Through everything he suffered, Joseph continued to maintain a good attitude, and God blessed him for it. Eventually, Joseph was given more responsibility and treated differently than the other prisoners. From the very first day he arrived in prison, Joseph kept his eyes on God, and God in turn watched out for Joseph. The promise of Colossians 3 is that if we're doing what we're doing wholeheartedly and working for the Lord and not for men, then even if it seems like the work we're doing is going unnoticed here and now, we can rest in the assurance that ultimately we'll receive a reward from the Lord. And I pray that for each of us, that would be more than enough. Amen.